let's bring in your latest post on Substack talking about the connection between coffee and the heart and chlorogenic acid.
Chlorogenic acid. So chlorogenic acid is a compound in coffee. It has a lot of effects. Actually, speaking to this heart-to-brain crosstalk, one thing it does is it kind of, in simple terms, intercepts the message. So chlorogenic acid might activate something called the NRF2 pathway, which might help protect the brain from a damaged heart. And there are other studies now, actually human randomized control trials, showing that chlorogenic acid and coffee containing chlorogenic acid can improve blood vessel function. Something called flow-mediated dilation, how well your blood vessels flex to increase blood flow. So in my post from this morning, I went over 2 human randomized control trials showing that chlorogenic acid and coffee rich in chlorogenic acid improves blood vessel function in humans. And then there was a really cool mouse study reviewed in the newsletter, and I'll make a video on it as well, showing that chlorogenic acid at high doses protected against atherosclerosis, so plaque development. They actually did a study in mice predisposed to heart disease, and gave them chlorogenic acid at 2 different doses, a placebo control, or just, I guess, a control diet. You don't really need to placebo a mouse, or a statin. And even though the statin lowered LDL more, the chlorogenic acid protected against plaque development just as much in this mouse model. The mechanism probably had to do with 1, reduced inflammation, 2, preventing this foam cell from developing, and then actually helping with cholesterol efflux. So there are human data supporting chlorogenic acid being heart healthy, and then mouse data showing that it also might be heart healthy. So the headline, good news, is coffee is probably pretty good for your heart. If you want the biggest bang for your buck, the practicals, there are higher chlorogenic acid levels in lighter roast coffees or unroasted green coffee, since the roasting process tends to break it down. So light roast or green coffee. And then another source that's becoming popular is yerba mate. So I have one brand I prefer. I do have an affiliation with them now. It's called Unimate. One of the reasons I like them is, unlike other brands that I know, they actually have published their chlorogenic acid levels and compared them to competitors, and they're quite high, about 600 milligrams in a pack, and they're pretty good. So you can check them out if you want. If you don't, just go for the learning. But yeah, chlorogenic acid's another sexy compound that's good for heart health. And if you like coffee, well, I just rationalized your coffee habit, so that's good. Ooh, one other thing, though, that's important. Timing of coffee. So a new study came out in the European Heart Journal that it was an observational study, but it was looking at the relationship between coffee intake and both all-cause mortality and cardiovascular-related mortality. And what they found, interestingly, was more coffee intake up to, I think it was greater than 3 cups per day, was dose-dependently related to lower all-cause mortality and lower cardiovascular-related mortality. So more coffee, good, right? But that relationship was only true in the people who were morning coffee drinkers only, rather than throughout the day coffee drinkers. Why this is, we don't know. If it is a true relationship, there are a couple explanations. One, obviously, caffeine later in the day might mess up your sleep. That's kind of obvious. Even if you're the same hours in bed, reporting the same hours of sleep, it can change the melatonin peak and alter sleep quality. That's not as interesting. What I think is more interesting and very possible is your body operates on a circadian rhythm. A lot of things are circadian. They ebb and flow, including inflammation. And a lot of inflammatory molecules peak early in the day. So it might have to do with timing the intake of coffee's polyphenols, including chlorogenic acid and its metabolites, at a point when they can have maximal impact because of when inflammatory signaling is happening in your body. I'm not saying that is for sure the case, but I thought it was pretty fascinating. That was brand new 2025 data that, yeah, if you're going to be a coffee drinker, more is better if you drink it in the morning.
I would assume, but you can clarify, in the mouse study, was that an isolated compound? I'm assuming they didn't give them coffee or yerba mate tea.
The mouse study was, I think the doses were 200 milligrams per kilogram or 400 milligrams per kilogram of chlorogenic acid in the mice. The human studies did, to be clear, coffee at different chlorogenic acid doses. The one RCT, I'm just pulling this out of my head, I think it's correct, 89 milligrams or 310 milligrams. The other RCT, there were 3 different doses, a 302, a 604, and a 906. Which actually adds an interpretive complexity, I'll just say for a moment, because In the human studies, about the 300 milligram dose seemed optimal. And in fact, there were diminishing returns at higher doses. But the mouse study had much, much higher doses. So, with the human studies, it looks like there's like a little bit of a U-shaped curve, which is actually pretty common for polyphenols. That's not irregular. But in the mouse study, higher levels tended to be more beneficial. In fact, both were high dose, but there was a higher dose. And the higher dose, the 400 milligrams per kilogram, was more cardioprotective. And the reason I call this, I called it, I think in the letter, an interpretive tension, is because you look at the human data and you're like, 300 milligrams, good. And humans are humans and mice are mice. So you're probably inclined to go with the human data. But the outcome in the mice, atherosclerosis, which you can't really test in a human randomized control trial, matters more. So what do you end up going with? And this is one of those places in science with interpretation where there's not a clear answer. My take, shooting for 300 milligrams, which is like 2 to 4 cups of coffee, or in this case, half like a Unimate stick, would probably be pretty good, but I'm not afraid of higher levels. So I won't avoid having a whole stick with 600 milligrams, for example. But that's one of those areas where I can't say perfectly what the dose should be. But to finish my thought, you were asking about coffee in the mice. They did not give mice coffee. In the human trials, they gave coffee and decaf coffee and isolated chlorogenic acid in different experiments, and all had the effect. So it does appear to be the chlorogenic acid in the coffee, and you don't need caffeinated. Decaf works.
You just shared what I was trying to tease out. If it's just the molecule itself, can we just supplement, especially for people that are more sensitive to caffeine?
Yeah.
And you mentioned decaf there too. So decaf work just as well?
Decaf, and then anything that gives less jitters. Yerba mate people, I don't have to be a salesperson for this, just people report less jitters. So that's a lot of the time why they substitute coffee in. Has lower caffeine levels overall, higher levels of theobromine, also in dark chocolate. So you can supplement, you can try substituting the coffee for the tea made from a South American shrub, this new fatty tea. Not fatty as in it's trendy. Actually, I joked because people were poking me about trying it. Huberman made it popular because he was always talking about it. And I'm like, I don't want to try it. I don't want to like it because I'm an old curmudgeon on the inside. I'm 29 on the outside. I'm like curmudgeon on the inside. And I don't like trends just because they're trends. But then I ended up liking it. So, it is what it is. Despite my best efforts to hate it. But yeah, you can supplement. That should work. I would not hyperdose it, but I would say 300 milligrams of chlorogenic acid. Not going to hurt you. Could help you. So, yeah.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Mark Bell, some of you might know him, started the sugar diet. He's a big time influencer, historically low carb keto. Ended up losing a lot of weight doing low carb keto, and he started posting about the sugar diet. He's saying he's losing